Okay, it's the next day. The gearbox has been dripping and draining overnight, so that's good. Let's get this filter out of my tray. Just see if it's got a name on it. No, not named. So no clue as to whether this is OE or not. I'm going to pop that in the bin. And I'm going to pour away all this into my drain tub. Now there's some debate when you're doing this sort of job as to whether you should flush your gearbox, use a flushing oil. The idea of that is when you drain down a gearbox like I just have, you're not draining down the entire system. There's still plenty of oil in the torque converter. And it is possible to drain the torque converter, but that's quite involved compared to what I've just done. So one of the ways you can get around it is, whoops, there we go. You can fill the gearbox back up with a flushing oil, which is a detergent style oil. And the idea of that is it'll flush out over use for a few miles all of the loose debris and rubbish that is in various small holes behind friction plates, etc., and really cleanse the gearbox, as well as displacing the oil that's in the torque converter and mixing it up with the flushing oil. And then you drain it down again, and in doing so you get rid of far more debris, and you never really get rid of every piece of oil in the gearbox unless you do a rebuild, but you are displacing it. Now the reason that a lot of people don't do that sort of thing is the fear that if you properly clean out the gearbox, you'll displace debris that's packed behind the friction plates and make the whole system loose, and it's not going to change quite so well, or you might disturb some debris that then goes into a small channel and blocks it. So there are arguments to do it and not to do it. Where's my little plastic cup gone? There it is. My own view on this is to take the middle ground, and that middle ground is change the oil more frequently. So yeah, I've probably removed about 5 litres of the 6 litres, let's say, that's in that gearbox. But I will change the oil again in probably 10,000 miles, and in doing so I will dilute the oil that I didn't change last time, and it will essentially be very, very clean. But I'm not doing the slightly more aggressive approach of flushing the gearbox. Flushing engines, I think, is pretty universally a good idea if you've got some flush oil. But gearboxes, yeah, it is debatable. So that's my view. If you want to flush them, flush them. You're doing a great job. If you don't want to flush them, just change your oil more regularly, and you'll take on a lot of the same benefits, but more gently. And there's no downside by the time and expense to doing a more regular change. And as these gearboxes are incorrectly labelled sealed for life, 2 changes in its lifetime is luxury. I really like this drain down container because it's the same item but I'm going to take to the tip and pour it out to dispose of. So it's funnel, drain pan and carrier all in one. And it's a really good design. Just going to pop under the car now and show you. So this is the underside of your XK8 gearbox. Just got a very clean piece of cloth. I'm just dabbing the dewdrops, if you like, of oil off the bottom so they don't fall on my face. He says, immediately disturbing something. Okay, so I've got a little bit in my face there. Not ideal. This is the underside of the box. All these little slots are where oil is supposed to flow in and out of the gearbox proper and the solenoids and manifolds. So there is a risk that if you've got lots of debris in your engine, these block up. Hence the need for nice clean oil, a filter change, and some of the risk in flushing the engine. But flushing the gearbox, sorry. Over here, it might seem odd to see a lot of wiring. This wiring is permanently submerged in hot oil, and the little loom can break down, although it's obviously intended to be in this environment. So all of these connectors are going into solenoids, and they operate various valves that allow you to change from one gear to another, and combinations of these valves opening and closing give you various modes. So your kick down, your towing, your hot oil condition, etc, etc, and the J-gate positions. So if one of these solenoids breaks down and fails to operate, you're going to get a gearbox fault code or a limp home mode, and you might be told by a garage, or you've got solenoid failure in your gearbox. This is what they're talking about. They are individually removable and replaceable. Working out which one is probably a job for a specialist, if I'm honest. I have some diagrams somewhere I've seen that show what each one does, so maybe you can work it out. But you can buy these and you can fit them yourself, but you've got to get inside the sump to do it. All of the wiring in the gearbox enters the gearbox through a cable up here, which goes through a rubber bung and a very complex connector. And so there's a sub-loom inside the gearbox and a loom outside the gearbox. Very occasionally, when work has been done on the underside of the car, that gets disturbed and that can cause faults as well. Now, while I'm under here, I'm going to try and remove the gasket. And I'm hoping it's not been stuck on. It may be attached just because of time and heat, etc. But I'm hoping it's not been glued on. Shouldn't be. And therefore it'll come off reasonably easily and in one piece, saving me a big clean-up job. Somewhere, oh, we get this corner, feels like it's coming. Okay, that came off nicely. So I'm hoping should be able to get the whole thing off. Oh, it snapped there. That's okay. We're not going to reuse it. I just don't want it to turn into a huge job scraping little bits of cardboard off the bottom of the gearbox. The quality of this mating surface is absolutely paramount to your oil stopping in your gearbox. It's breaking up into little bits, unfortunately, around here. Probably just out of shot from you. I definitely wouldn't recommend trying to reuse this, even though, as with this one before I started, it did look in good condition, because it's been compressed, in my case, probably for 26 years. And it's not going to spring back and then reseal against your sump in the same way. And with the best will in the world, you will not put your sump back precisely in the same position as it came off. It's going to be very close, but it will seal differently. And so your chance of this being a watertight seal are very, very slim. Right, this is quite boring. So I'm going to get all this off, and then I'll be back under with a plastic scraper and just plane this surface to take off any residue from the gasket. Okay, so that's all cleaned off and ready for reassembly. Now, I am on occasion accused of making things look too easy, and not in always a complimentary manner. So this has got nothing to do with my talent, my tools, my experience. It's mainly to do with the edit. So I will say that took me an hour and a half. So no, it's not easy. I did most of it with a credit card in the end to scrape it nice and flat, and then finished it off with the green side of a washing up sponge. So for those of you unfamiliar with that's like a plastic wool, quite coarse, but it is plastic, and just rubbing away at the surface, and I've got a really nice smooth mating surface now. It's at this stage, whilst everything's off, you're best familiarising yourself with the filler plug. So this is the back of the filler plug. As we talked about in the first video, it's identified by this casting sticking out. You can see exactly where it goes, and you're going to have to fill the gearbox through that. And one of the problems is some of that filling will be done while the engine is running, and this is pretty hot. So be familiar with where it is, how to get it in and out. Actually try tightening up the filler plug like this, using tools, using whatever technique, but it's a lot easier to do it while the engine's cold and while you can see both sides. Also, I will be filling it using an oil syringe, and I've got a length of pipe with a copper tube on the end. So what I'll also be doing is just shaping my copper tube to be really easy to put into this hole, hook into place so it doesn't keep falling out, and just basically getting everything nice and ready. Well, I told you I was going to tidy up the pan, didn't I? I went a little bit further. Made it look pretty. Put the date of the service on there. And inside, lovely, I'll just get a wipe out one more time. But that's ready to have its magnets back in. So these bolts I've had stored in a jar of WD-40 overnight. Give them a clean. I've got a 1mm by 6 thread gauge, and that just enables me to do a real quick visual check. but the threads are clean and not been stretched. And I'm going to be going through these bolts and confirming, but they're still all in good condition. And I've got a little spike, because on one of them already I found a little flake of aluminium in the threads, just hooked it out. So again, I'll get on with that. Just give it a little pick. Lovely. And I've got a just a quick update. I've been able to establish while playing in the bin, but the old filter, I don't know if you can see this, it's black and it's glossy, but the tooling marks indicate that, can you see it? I don't know. Anyway, I can see it. This was last updated March 96. So I think it's safe to say that is the original filter. So this has not been done before. It's IBS or IES, hard to say, Filtran, made in Germany. So yeah, not sure about the brand name, but original. Okay, so we've got 22 identical bolts all cleaned up. The pockets for the Torx tool goes into has been checked and cleaned out, and the threads have all been checked. So they're ready to go back in my magnetic tray. And I've got two that hold the filter into place, which look a bit different. Time to open our filter pack. So that's taped down. Let's get that out. There's our filter. So this one's a pattern part, no maker's name on it, but the construction is identical to one I've just taken off. So we've got a pressed steel top, two eyelets, plastic base, filter material inside, and it also says PAG 66 plus GF 33%. Now I don't know what that means, but it's on the other one. Next, we've got our sealing ring. Pretty sure this is going to be a standard O-ring. Have a look. Yeah, standard section. So if you have a wide selection of O-rings, it's not necessary to have this one. It's not shaped for the Jag in any way. And there's a little groove around this neck. Remember that this is a metal edge, so you do not want to cut or slice the O-ring on it. Be very careful. I'm going to hold that into place in the groove and then stretch it all the way around so it doesn't roll over that sharp edge. There we go. That's his sealing ring. Now when I'm underneath the car, I'll get a little bit of oil on my finger, transmission oil, and I'll wipe that around the seal so it pops into the port more easily. 010 written on there, don't know why. And then the last item in this pack should be our gasket, which is why we've got this big piece of cardboard and why I haven't opened this up till now. I didn't want to get it damaged. It looks the same colour, looks like the same material as the one I've just removed, so that's good. Keep him nice and flat. I'm going to drape it over the pan. And that looks like a really good fit. Sometimes when you get poorly manufactured pattern parts, the gaskets or the machined holes even don't line up perfectly when you've got multiple holes and quite a large shape. Now this, excuse me, this is obviously a very large shape with many holes, and I don't know if you can see, but that's going to line up really, really well. Doesn't seem to be any cumulative error around there, so I'm rather pleased with that. Well, the next part of this service is going to be to put the filter in. So get your two specialist nuts. Just reading if I can read what it says on it. Bosena. Nope, don't know that brand. Boesner. Bosena. Now, we got those. The torque, right torque for these is not high, but evidently you don't want the things dropping back out. So I've got myself a little torque wrench, and correct torque is 4 Newton meters. If you are not doing this with a torque wrench, think of it, 4 Newton meters is what you can apply with, let's say, a screwdriver, with no tools attached to it. So you're talking quite a light weight with a lever like this. So let's put this on 4. It's quite a nice idea if you've got a Jag or any other car that has lots of plastic parts, to get yourself a nice lightweight torque wrench, because quite a few things need adjusting to quite low torques. Okay, that's 5 on mine, so I wind it off 1. So a quick visual guide to 4 Newton meters. Again, if you haven't got a really lightweight torque wrench, if I just put the square drive in my vise, this is set to 4 Newton meters, and if I get this thing to click, which is about there, I could do that with my little finger at that distance. I couldn't do it with my little finger at that distance. So it gives you an idea. If you're using a ratchet, you should be able to do it at, let's say, 8 to 10 inches, 150 mil from the pivot point with your little finger without hurting yourself. Now, it should go without saying, but at this stage, cleanliness is everything. So make sure you've got clean hands. Don't put your filter down on the floor and get it gritty. Here's the hole that the seal is going to go into. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of oil off the bottom of there and wipe that around the seal to make it slightly easier to get in. And yeah, this is what you're lining up this with. And you've got one threaded boss here, and you've got another threaded boss over here that you're going to be popping the bolts in. So position it approximately and give it a good push. There we go. She's now in. And let's get that bolt into place up here. Another one over here. Okay, now we're back to our slightly unusual Torx T27, and you want to bring that up by hand until the whole thing is seated properly. Because I have it, I'm going to deploy my torque wrench. And let's go over this one. Turn gently, try not to make it click. Turn gently, try not to make it click. Back to the first one, try not to make it click. Back again. Because you are dealing with a assembly made of plastic and pressed steel, it's probably going to compress quite a bit, but because we're going to apply so little torque to it, if you take it up fast, there's a chance that when it warms up it'll loosen off. So try not to make your torque wrench click by being gentle and smooth and stopping when you guess it's just about to reach the set torque, and keep alternating. That way it won't loosen when it gets warm. Yeah, it's compressed quite a bit. Lightweight torque wrenches can be very expensive because they're not common, but if you want to get one that's not a particular brand name, just a sort of Chinese one that will see you through for the odd job, try searching for bicycle torque wrench. This one's quite a nice one because I do use it as a Sealy, which is, you know, it's a brand people know. Their tools are okay. It's not top of the range. I've just clicked. And I've clicked. One last push. Make sure it's fully home. Yeah, just got a fraction more on it that time as well. And on that one. And that is the filter replaced. So our next challenge is to lift up the pan nice and smoothly with the gasket in place. Now I don't want to glue the gasket on, it's not meant to be glued on. So all I'm going to do is put a little bit of grease, tiny dab here and there, on the pan, put the gasket on top of the pan in the right place so it won't move around too easily, and then offer it up. And I'm going to put that bolt because it's dead easy to get at, and that bolt because it's dead easy to get at in, and then I can do things at my leisure. So I've got some high melting point grease. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to put a very small amount outside of this slightly raised line, which is where the most pressure is. Just like so. Just in a couple of places, so that the gasket doesn't slide too easily. I know it sounds counterintuitive, I'm using grease, but the grease is slightly sticky. It's not going to stop my gasket from fully pulling down, which is what sealant might do. Not going to make it hard for me to remove the next time I want to go in here. It's just stopping the gasket from shifting whilst I position it and the holes not lining up whilst I try to put the bolts in. If that happens, I might damage the gasket trying to get the bolts in. Some people swear by using gasket sealants on everything like blue Hylamar, and that's absolutely fine. I've used them plenty of times myself. You do what you want to do. This is a nice flat surface. Really shouldn't need anything other than a good gasket. And in part one of this mission, I'm literally just going to take 2 of my bolts down with me and my Torx tool, because once it's hanging, I haven't got to struggle and strain. And again, dirt is your enemy on this. So make sure you don't let anything get into this pan. You want nice clean oil and nothing else. Okay, boys and girls, let's see how we do. So offering this up. See if I can line the holes up. Okay, is in enough for location. Just reposition myself for the bottom one. Probably ruined your shot, but I can see. See if I can get my tool. There it is. Pop that in and spin it up by hand just to get them to touch the mating surfaces. You don't want to let the pan hang from one bolt. That will distort it, or the flange anyway, and you risk a leak. So that's touching, and then get up here and get this one in too. All I'll be doing now is fitting the other 20 bolts, because there's 22 hold this up, all into their holes and running them up until they make contact with the pan. And that's it. Come back to you in a bit. Okay, so off camera, I put all the bolts in loose. Then I tightened them all to 6 Newton meters. What I'm going to do now is tighten them up to the proper torque, which is 11 Newton meters. So let's just adjust this. And I will recommend, once the engine's been warmed up once, recheck them, because the gasket tends to relax a little bit with the heat. You don't have to do a particular cross-hatch pattern on tightening these, but I like to. It's just good practice. So my pattern is take a corner, next corner, next corner, and so on all the way around the pan, and then fill in the gaps. If you make it too complicated, there's 22 bolts, you'll miss one. There we go. All 11'd, and I will go back over those once the whole thing's been warmed up. But for now, I'm going to park it there for a bit because again, getting a bit tired, and I'll come back to it tomorrow and fill it with oil. Yeehaw! So thanks for following us along, and see you soon. If you're enjoying our channel, then don't forget to subscribe and click the little bell icon so you get notifications of new videos. And please give us a thumbs up or thumbs down, and you can share the videos. And below the video is always the area where you can comment and get involved with the chat.